You're watching Philadelphia 76ers now. I'm Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for tapping on today's video and hope you all enjoy it. And if you want year-round coverage of the Sixers, this is your go-to spot. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Coming up on today's show, could the Sixers trade for Jordan Clarkson, fortify that bench, and get a really good score with that second unit who's been putting up numbers for a really long time? We also want to get to some ridiculous stats on Joel Embiid, what he's done from December into January now with that excellent performance against the Chicago Bulls. We've never really seen anything like it, especially in the modern NBA. But speaking of this Jordan Clarkson trade, NBA trade deadline coming up on February 8th. And if a move happens, or if there's a big report out there, we're going to talk about it right here on the channel. Let's get to 14,000 subscribers before the deadline. Just hit that sub button right now. To Jordan Clarkson, we begin there, and let's have a conversation here with all of the hoopers out there. Should the Sixers look into trading for the Utah Jazz guard? I was watching a game the other night, and Kira turned to me and she said, "Man, there aren't a lot of fans at that Jazz game. Nobody goes." And I'm like, it's actually kind of sad because given the small media market that Utah is, Salt Lake City, usually a lot of fans show up to their games. This year, though, they're not, because the Jazz have been so bad. After last year, they had a pretty surprising season where they exceeded expectations. So because they've been awful this year, could they look to deal away some parts? We've talked lately about a player like Lauri Markkanen. Now we're talking about Jordan Clarkson. Let's get to this report from Brett Siegel. He said Clarkson would be an instant upgrade for various playoff contending teams around the NBA. Boston Celtics have shown prior interest, but it would be impossible for Boston to acquire the veteran unless they gave up either Derek White or Al Horford. Here's where it gets juicy. The Philadelphia 76ers would be another intriguing landing spot for Clarkson, especially with De'Anthony Melton in the final year of his contract. Now, a lot of you might be concerned about the De'Anthony Melton injury. He missed that game against the Bulls. Not really expected to be a long-term injury for him, but he is in the final year of his deal. And if you look at a player like Jordan Clarkson, former Sixth Man of the Year, he's familiar with coming in off the bench. That's where he's better suited. That's where he's more comfortable to really go on some of these heaters and score points as a microwave scorer. The numbers this year, down a little bit. And it's a little bit odd because in the last couple of seasons, Clarkson has been really good, where the shooting numbers are up, the points per game a little bit higher than they are this year. 17 points per game, 40% from the floor, only 29% from three-point range. Those numbers, they've really plummeted as compared to the production in a couple of years going into the 2023-2024 campaign. But as we know with the Sixers team, you have Tyrese Maxey, who's been a really good creator for others himself, and he can score at all three levels. Joel Embiid is just playing the best basketball of his career. He's involving his teammates more, and because he's demanding so much attention, other guys are getting open looks. And if Clarkson gets some open looks, you look at some of the pros and cons here, maybe the pros continue, and some of the cons are just able to kind of mellow out a little bit where they don't become major deficiencies in his game on a better supporting cast like the Sixers had this year compared to the Jazz. Pros and cons, instant scoring off the bench, the inefficiency, a little bit of a concern. That's why he's always been better suited as a bench scorer. He's improving as a playmaker, but he's a below-average defender. So you get the highs and lows with the game, but again, that's kind of what you're expecting for a player like this, who is not a starter for a reason. And I think his contract is pretty affordable for what you know you're getting. I mean, he can give you 15 to 20 points every single night, and in a playoff game, he can create for himself, and he can be a guy who can go get a bucket. The salary this year is pretty high at $23.5 million. Next 2 years, though, 14 for a player who gives you something valuable, and that's to put points on the scoreboard. On Monday night, became the first Jazz player with the triple-double since 2008. He dropped 20, 10, and 11. Unfortunately for him this year, though, he has a performance like this, and then he has the clunker. My take, if he can limit his inefficiency and be more efficient and proficient as a scorer. And if he doesn't over-dribble so much and kill some of these offensive possessions, I think that he can be a valuable player off the bench. The other thought here, though, if you don't want to trade for a player like Jordan Clarkson, is that you somehow move De'Anthony Melton from the starting lineup to the bench. Maybe you start a player like Kelly Oubre, and then De'Anthony Melton, who's a better two-way player than Jordan Clarkson, becomes your go-to sixth man. Here's our trade idea, and of course, we're going to want your thoughts on it. Sixers get Jordan Clarkson. The Jazz get a player who I think has increased his value, and he's increased how people in Philadelphia, his hometown, think about him. That's Marcus Morris. Other than that, Furkan Korkmaz and a 2026 first-round pick, it's not all that much money if you're getting Jordan Clarkson at his highs. So what do you think? Should the Sixers trade for Clarkson? Give me a T for trade or a P for pass. As always, share your thoughts. Share your basketball intellect with us down below in the comment section. Coming up next, we're going to show you some insane Joel Embiid numbers. And I know that he's had some shortcomings in the playoffs, but if you're not appreciating what he's doing right now, he's truly playing one-of-one basketball. First, we want to tell you about PrizePicks, the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. Get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. Daily fantasy sports made easy, and here's how to play. You pick two or more players, and you choose more or less on their projected stat lines. And you can mix sports. For instance, here, you can go with Patrick Mahomes, as well as LeBron James. And you go more or less on their projected stats for any given game. You can choose flex. You can choose power play. There's injury insurance. Let's say I selected 6 picks on a more or less, right? You don't have to have all 6 right. You can go 4 of 6 and still win real money and win up to 25 times your money. You've seen the advertisements all across television, and now you're seeing this advertisement right here on 76ers Now. Because of the growth of the channel, we're picking up sponsors like this, so show some love to the show. PrizePicks.com/CLNS, code CLNS, and make sure you use that promo code so that they know that Chat Sports sent you. All right, next up, round out the show with this, taking a look at some ridiculous Joel Embiid numbers. And you have to put into perspective what he's done all year, but specifically in December as well as January. Embiid's stats and rankings this year, by the way, Sean Barnard does a good job covering the Sixers on Twitter, has some very informative tweets. So I recommend you give him a follow and bookmark some of his stuff. First in points, 5th in rebounds, 19th in assists. So 6.2 dimes, that number up a lot from the last couple of years. Blocks per game, 10th. Steals, 35th. Net rating, 1st. Loose balls recovered per game, 2nd. Contested twos per game, 3rd. So this goes to show you that Joel Embiid does have an impact on both ends of the floor, and that's why he's so valuable to his team. Like Nikola Jokic, I was wrong. Probably should have won MVP last year, or at least in the playoffs, he proved that he was the MVP. This year, though, Embiid has been much better, especially as a two-way player. In December, I don't know if we're really going to see numbers like this again or that often, where a player for an entire month averages 40 points per game, 10.5 rebounds on 60.5% from the field. Patrick Beverley said on this podcast, if he continues this play, we're looking at maybe the best single season of all time. Second to ever average 40 and 10 in a month. Wilt Chamberlain did it. So when I say we might not see this again, we haven't seen it since Wilt. First to average 40 and 10 on 60% field goals, minimum of 9 games. In 61-62, for all the new cats and the new Bulls watching, that's 1961 and 1962. Wilt Chamberlain, when he averaged 50.4 points per game and 25.7 rebounds, 28.5 points, 14.5 rebounds, 1.4 assists per 75 possessions, okay? This year, Embiid per 75 possessions. Better numbers than Wilt Chamberlain. 37 points, most all time, 12.5 rebounds, 6.5 dimes. Did I tell you that these numbers were insane? They are insane. Embiid also, the first player in NBA history to register 30-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, 10-plus dimes in a single game. despite sitting out the entire fourth quarter. And Embiid was able to put up some crazy numbers despite not having played a lot of fourth quarters. Here's what Patrick Beverley had to say about Embiid. If he finishes the season the way that he's playing now, it would be the greatest season of a single player that has ever played basketball. It's hard to disagree with him because Embiid this year is doing great things that literally have not been done since Wilt Chamberlain. And Wilt Chamberlain was playing against people like me, 6 foot, $180, trying to guard him on the low block. Of course he's able to put up numbers. I'm not necessarily taking away from what Wilt was able to do, but the level of athlete, the level of player, nutrition, body types, athletic training, basketball training that has increased in 2023, 2024 compared to all the way back then. It's just a better game now, and Embiid is putting up better numbers. It's crazy. Will Embiid win a second straight MVP? Y for yes or N for no? I think that Embiid is playing better this year than his MVP season last year. And I think as of right now, we're going to continue to stake our claim on this opinion. He should be the unanimous favorite to win NBA MVP. It's also important to note that Embiid can only miss 10 more games to remain eligible for MVP or all NBA selections. Gets a little bit of a payday getting all NBA. A lot of recognition, MVP. So that 10-game marker, important to remember right there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I don't think there's another Sixers channel doing what we do here on 76ers Now with producer Chip and Chase. So hit that sub button and we'll catch you next time here on the show.